Hi guys, David Stone, Billericay Bota. Billericay because I was born in Billericay, Bota because I live on a boat, and Billericay has got a strong association with the boating fraternity. I was raised on Mayflower Road, next to Pilgrim's Way, and many of the street names in Billericay were named after the founding fathers of America. Today's subject is the big one, death. And those who know me will know that I don't like it. I fear it. I don't have this. I'm not sanguine about this. This kind of like, it's not death I fear. It's the process of dying. None of that. I just don't like it. I don't like the idea of mortality. I'm not comforted by the fact that we didn't used to exist and we then stop existing. Um, the pragmatic approach to it. I just think it's a major design fault, if you like, but then it wasn't designed, it's just evolved. Anyway, I don't like it, but it is what it is. And I'm now in my third score year and 10, 70, and it's just around the corner. But the thing I want to focus on is layered. I mean, first of all, as we speak, 2026, there is a superabundance, an explosion of online social media, YouTube, and other sources of information about longevity. There's the science of it, the biology of it, the nutritional exercise basis for it, and promises galore, usually costing a bit of money, that, with this pill, that pill, this piece of dietary intervention, this form of exercising, Tai Chi or whatever it is, you can add considerably to the current Western expectation of 75 for men being the kind of average age of death. And there's all sorts of questions around that, whether that's an ethical, moral, or just justifiable thing to want to do, extend your life. And that's happening at the same time in parallel to the growth of transhumanism, which are serious attempts to use technology, nanotechnology, biological interventions, genetic uh, mutations, all sorts of ways of extending life through interfering in the, in quotes, natural human cycle. And many of the technology things are building on things that we do already, like hip replacement, lung transplant, that kind of stuff. What they can't do yet, though I think someone in Russia's tried it, is a brain transplant. Either way, I think at the moment, as we speak, whether it's through longevity interventions or through transhumanist interventions, it's highly probable that within the next 5 to 10 years we could extend the life expectancy to, I don't know, 90, 100. We're still going to die, I think, at some point because you can't sustain the support for the eco structure, if you like, of the body, the biology. At some point, the brain is going to sort of pack it in. But we can definitely add many years to the current expectation. And then there's a question of whether we ought to do it or not, which is, in a sense, a moral question about the use of resources that will generally favour the rich. And as someone pointed out to me, if you live a longer time, you're going to need a much bigger income. And most people have got nowhere near the resources needed to spend on things that we, again, take for granted, like health and food and our shelter, warmth, and comforts during the winter. But that aside, there's the other question about, um, does death hold any important lessons, as it were, for our ambitions around active philosophy? Um, Before we get stuck into this, I'm very, very up for hearing from you. If you want to come back to me with any comments, suggestions, ideas, or observations, whether you want to contradict me or support what I'm doing or whatever, or you've got your own angle on things. So please contact me. Best way is through either emailing at davidalexanderstone.outlook.com or messaging me on 079 500 13153. So, in terms of the philosophical underpinnings, I think personally that the fact of death is what marks us out as being different from any other species, in that we're aware of it, we're self-aware of it. So we're self-aware of our own mortality, and it blows a hole, in my judgment, in the conundrums that we've posed to ourselves in the debate between different branches of metaphysics and philosophy. Um, which, for example, one of the accounts of Aristotle is his creation of the logical precepts. And the famous one is an account of deduction, which goes, it's a syllogism which goes, all men are mortal, Plato is mortal, all men are mortal, Plato is a man, therefore Plato is mortal, sorry. So the conclusion is contained in the premise, and it's true by default. What's not seldom commented on is the mortal bit, because how do we know that all men are mortal? From a purely inductive perspective, we don't, even though every person that's ever lived has died. From a purely deductive point of view, from a David Hume kind of perspective, no instances of a single thing can prove it. Though we all know, right, and this is the point, it's I think is a trick of language and a trick of logic to be fooled by the inductive problem. We know that everyone's died up till now. We don't need to get caught up in whether or not it can be proved. We just know it. But also, that realization proves something else, which is highly contested in our metaphysics and philosophies. And that is the question of causation. Because again, following David Hume and others, uh, there's a tendency to see causation as a learned thing, that we learn about cause and effect. Um, the kind of Lockean idea that we are born with a blank slate and everything has to be learnt through experience, something which is characteristic of British empiricism. Um, Bishop Berkeley, Locke, and David Hume, and many others that come after. I think it seems to be the mood of the moment, this adherence to um, British empiricist kind of perspective that now seems to pervade Western Europe and the Americas. If you like, the Western canon, the Western tradition. I think it's wrong. I think the fact that we're aware of our own mortality is a fact that is also consistent with our knowing cause and effect as a precondition of our knowing anything. If that's true, then cause and effect is a priori, which is another highly contested claim. There are many people in the West who deny the validity of a priori claims. It's one of the Kant's categories, the a priori. That is to say, knowledge that comes before experience. My claim is that our knowledge of our own mortality, which is not deductive and it's not inductive, it's a combination of abduction and intuition, experience and knowledge, and just reasoning, um, could not come about unless we had a prior sense of what cause and effect is. Cause is our life, effect is our mortality. So it has deep purposes and deep resonances. And it has other layered applications, which I find extraordinarily interesting and useful. And the most important for me is the other of the many, many dilemmas within our metaphysics and philosophy is the question of purpose. The empiricist tradition, not exclusively, but it does lend itself to a kind of skeptical perspective, because if you adhere to the inductive principle, which I think goes wrong because it wants to try and assert that the real task of our epistemology, our knowledge, is for certain truth, which it's not, and Karl Popper made great strides forward in proving, I think, almost without contestation, really, that it's not truth, big T, that we strive for. It is contingent truth, knowledge which we can rely on of the moment for the moment, and it's always contestable. It's always improvable. Once you accept that, then you're not hidebound by this idea of big truth T. What is the meaning of it all? As if there has to be an arc, an ARCHE, archy, a kind of first or primary cause. The classic one is the theological assertion about if everything's contingent, you just keep going back. Life is contingent, the world is contingent, the universe is contingent, the Big Bang is contingent. There must be, you squeeze this out of your reasoning, there must be a cause, a primary cause that's not contingent. Otherwise, we just get into the infinite regress and go back and back and back and back and don't go anywhere. And for there to be a primary cause, there has to be an uncaused cause. Otherwise, you're back into the infinite regress. The only, in this theological perspective, account for an uncaused cause is God or the Almighty. So you see where you go with this adherence to the big T truth, kind of there must be an ultimate truth to things. And then the opposite is true. When that goes, when the Enlightenment in the sort of 15th, 16th century broke with the dependency on the church, a whole range of other things happened. But in that process, there's quite a lot of current theologians who argue that all knowledge and all policies and moralities and ideas about the world, economic, social, philosophical, psychological, owe a debt to the church. I think the expression I heard once was, all knowledge began or had its origins in the waters of religion, which I think is complete nonsense. The things that oppose theology obviously have come out of an environment in which theology was, if not totally dominant, was paramount, preeminent. What this argument doesn't account for, of course, is the period before Christianity, before the Orthodox Abrahamic religions, if you like, the pagan era. There was and it's recorded, a period paganism of beliefs based upon animalism and spiritualism and all kinds of other isms that had nothing to do with Christianity, but somehow, and the theologian of the Christian or Abrahamic conventions can't answer this, somehow gave way to or gave expression to Christianity at some definable point in our historical and cultural journey. Anyway, so what death has done for me is to present an argument for the inherent sense of purpose that we've given to or depended on theology to sustain or to articulate first and then to sustain is unnecessary. Once you drop the big T claim for truth and you accept that our arguments, our evidence for things are always contingent and contestable and should be subject to critical review going forward, it does the opposite of skepticism. It creates a very positive environment of learning and continuous learning in which meaning acquires a new meaning. The meaning is not about some ultimate purpose or some truth. It's about a purpose and a truth that we give to things. And we do this because of our knowledge of our own mortality. Rather than that being, as it were, the final argument against there being a purpose, it's really a powerful argument for why there is a purpose. It's just that the purpose is not divine, it's not ordained, it's not spiritual, it's not even mystical in the highly spiritualized sense of it being mystical. It's certainly not just a product of a rambling metaphysics. It does, I think, emerge from a fusion of a robust scientific methodology, the basic and core principle of which is contestability, evidence, mechanism. Um, as you know, I'm a very great fan of Alex O'Connor, but one of his own beliefs uh, is about the nature of things, and he's very skeptical about the nature of things, and he's also um, very skeptical about the nature of science, which he says is purely descriptive. It doesn't explain anything. And that only holds up for me if you stretch the meaning of the word description until it actually encapsulates explanation. Because there's so much within science that clearly does explain. If you see how a patient survives a lung transplant, for example, or you watch a woman giving birth to a baby and she has a difficult time, and there's all sorts of interventions that have to take place. The knowledge about what is necessary to be done in order to produce an outcome that can be predicted is based upon an explanation of what's going on, not a description. All right. So, and that same is true for our accounts of photosynthesis and plate tectonics and cosmology and our prediction of planetary alignments and eclipses and even the weather. All these things are not descriptions of things that are just happening, but accounts of the process, the mechanisms, the dynamics, the interplay between different forces, often critical relationships between different forces that bring these things about. The account of the critical relationships between things that bring things about is what explanation actually means. Therefore, even though it is the thing I fear and dread most in terms of existence, ontology, material existence, it is also the most powerful foundation of our knowledge, our epistemology. Death is to both. So, perversely or curiously or weirdly, while it's the thing I dread the most, it's a facet of our existence as Homo sapiens sapien, which gives us the richness, the variety, the capability, the mechanisms and the equipment to carve out a meaning for ourselves, which would not be there, I don't think, without the certain knowledge of our own mortality. Later.